So I'm Jamie. I'm a co-founder, co-director of Native Women Lead. Been here since we founded the organization in 2017. Well, we weren't an organization then. We were just a group of Indigenous women that were trying to figure out how to close our own racial wealth gaps. We will actually be hosting the inaugural Native Women's inaugural Growth Capital Summit in San Francisco, October 2nd through the 4th. And really the intention there is to bring Indigenous women founders who are getting ready for investment or are investment ready. But a lot of our body of work is really focused on increasing access to capital and opportunity for Indigenous women entrepreneurs. So a big part of our offering today and working with Emerald, who has actually done some work in raising capital and is definitely aware of the challenges and barriers that folks face in the community, to bring her skill set and expertise. So to kick it off, I just want to introduce Emerald Storm, who's the founder and CEO of Emerald Virtual Assistants. Her commitment to excellence and attention to detail has made her and her company a driving force in the world of virtual assistants. Beloved by her clients and her team, Emerald is forever innovating ways to help make her clients' lives easier while tirelessly working to provide thriving careers for her VAs. Emerald is a huge proponent of diversity and inclusion in the workplace and advocates strongly for each member of her team to have voice about their passions and hobbies. She encourages each VA to pursue their interests, going so far as to help research and finance talents and fields of interest. She believes that each individual should feel safe bringing their whole selves to work, participating in team building exercise like offering time during team meetings for Roses and Thorns, and does VA-led tech talks once a month. Emerald, I'd like to just thank you and welcome you to this space. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, so it's really great to be here. My name is Emerald Storm. I'm from the Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians, also known as Anishinaabe in our own tongue. And I'm just so glad to be here and to be able to spend time with the Native Women Lead community and talking about all things capital and some of the barriers that I've met, and passing on some of the success tips that I've helped our clients go through capital raises before, to help you be successful as well. But then also I want to talk a little bit today about creating a financial legacy for you and for your family, because I feel like that's really an important part of what we do and why we want to have these businesses be successful and thriving. So yeah, let's go ahead. If you feel comfortable unmuting and telling us a little bit about yourself and your company and where you're at in your capital journey. And just so you know, like capital is essentially just a fancy term for money. Like how do you bring money into your company? Where are you at looking to bring more money into your company? And yeah, and we can start there, and then we'll go around the circle. If you're not comfortable, please feel free to just put it in the chat, and I can read that and make sure that your voice is still heard.
Well, I can go first. Yo soy Chinewi Cuchamalea, y me feliz. Hello, everybody. My name is Genesis. I am Yoy Miyaki, descendant from Sonora, Mexico. I see myself as a prism. I have a lot of hats and I have a lot of sides, but I see myself as a community organizer. I do cultural preservation through archaeology, and I love just being in community, being connected to my roots. And I did activism and community organizing, and I still do. But just quickly, you know, it got me to a place of a lot of burnout, and it made me question about how I was taking care of my own life and my family's life, and trying to balance that with food activism and community organizing, because even though I loved the work, it did take me to a very dark place that, you know, deteriorated my physical and emotional and spiritual well-being. And one of the biggest factors in my life at that, and it still is just the financial stress. I was at a place where a lot of even my comrades and my peers, all of us, even though we're out there in community organizing, doing this amazing noble work, a lot of us just were struggling to survive and trying to, you know, have jobs, for example, that accepted our values. A lot of us would lose jobs, you know, because people would find out about the work that we were doing. Or for me, many times I had to hide a lot of the work that I did, and that created a lot of stress for me. So I got into a point where I understood that I had very little financial education and financial literacy, and I was just surviving. And I got into an opportunity with someone that was teaching me about financial literacy, and I really loved the work, and it helped me and my family. And I decided that that was a really big portion in my community that was missing. And I just didn't see anybody out there that looked like me, who's queer, who's indigenous, who's a woman, who's an entrepreneur, because I've been with my business for just a year. I'm kind of in that building stage, creating networks, getting out into the community, getting to, let them know that I exist and I have free resources. And I'm really here in service of financial literacy for my community. And I'm in my journey of building my brokerage as Abundancia Financial Strategies, and really just focusing on women entrepreneurs, indigenous entrepreneurs, and BIPOC, people in my community. A lot of my community members, for example, work in the fields, so they have little to no retirement plans, little to no benefits. So how do I help the community who have, who are very like the hard part of our country, who, go and pick up our food, right? But there's nobody taking care of them and letting. So I just saw that necessity in my own family, in my life, and I wanted to provide that. And most of all, I wanted to do it through a radical financial perspective, because I do see myself as an anti-capitalist, and I see myself as, I want to be able to talk about finances in a way that is reflected of my indigenous values of sustainability and reciprocity and generosity and community. Again, though, I've been hustling for a whole year, and I still am. I work other jobs in order to get money to put into my business. And it is exhausting, trying to provide free services, because I made it a way that I provide free services for my community, which I love. However, it does put me in a position where I have to go out and hustle for side jobs in order for me to sustain myself. And I'm just, looking for support and help, and seeing maybe there's other ways that I just don't know, that I have access to money in order for me to continue my business without burning myself out with all the side hustles that like recently I had 4 jobs. I don't know how I did it. I had to let go of a few of them now because of my own health. But yeah, that's where I am. I'm in that building networking, building community, and hopefully by the end of this year, just having a more solidified capital so I can continue to grow my financial literacy business. Yeah, so that's just a little bit about me.
Thank you, Genesis. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I want to open it up to other folks too. Since we're a smaller group, we thought it'd be great to hear who you are, a little bit about your business, and how essentially Emerald's expertise can support you as you move forward in your entrepreneurial journey. Could we have Lux Pup come off camera, or there you go, or just off mute?
Yeah, hi, my name is Clarissa. I do have a business partner. I'm representing both of us today, but it's myself, and my business partner's name is Rose. What Lux Pup is a luxury mobile grooming service. So it's pretty much a groomer on wheels. We're in the startup phase. We just recently got approved with our name with the state, so that feels good. We're kind of taking in the steps right now. We're just taking the steps to legal formality. As far as my capital journey, it's kind of weird and hard to explain. Well, not necessarily hard to explain. It's just, I think it's because my long-term goals is literally to feed my community, because I am also a farmer. So my long-term goals is to be able to do that not only for my tribal community, but also more so the community that I live in now, that I like to say shaped my existence. So Lux Pup and dog grooming has always been a passion of mine, but I always kind of explain it to people that it's always just been a hobby that I get paid for, and something that I've fallen back to in between like my education and farming like ventures here and there, and moving throughout the state of California. But with that said, like it is something that I have my heart in. It's the company itself, it means a lot to me because I feel like my area literally needs Lux Pup because of the care that we intend on providing to the pets and the convenience that we plan on providing to our pet parents and our customers. As far as our capital journey right now, we literally actually just sent our business plan off to, I don't even know what to call this. It's in a sense like hopefully an investor. When COVID hit, I actually had a family who I had worked with in my farming career approach me in support of me and actually offered me reparations to start my own farm. And I actually just finished, it literally took me over a year to write the business plan for my farm. And I was also being mentored by like 3 to 4 people who've lived through this, who have been through this, and who are actually successful farmers now. But one thing they put into perspective for me was the fact that I am going to need some type of supplemental income to build my farm to where I want it to be and to be able to feed the people that I want to feed without with staying true to my values, because I'm not into farming for capital gains. I literally, like, people think I'm crazy, especially when I'm talking to business people, when I tell them like I want to feed poor people, and they're like, well, how are you going to do that and sustain yourself? But I do believe there's a solution to every problem. So I do have a plan on how I intend on getting there. But Lux Pup, I plan to build this business, one, to serve the 4-legged in my community, but also to provide me a supplemental income so then I can also work towards my farm. So it's kind of weird because I'm kind of in the place with this family, and I feel like you shouldn't, I mean, clearly you shouldn't have to negotiate reparations because that's not what reparations is, but that's actually where I'm at in the moment. So I've reached out to the family and have let them know, like, you guys are still technically supporting me in my farming dream, but it's just the fact that I need to take this route in order to get there long term and provide myself stability and to ensure that I am successful. So I'm literally, they got my business plan reached, they live in Ohio, so it reached them on the 6th. So I've kind of just, I did communicate with them, so I'm kind of more so in a spot to where I'm waiting to hear back from them. But Lux Pup itself has a very, very high startup cost because the vehicle alone is a 3-figure, like, to have it built, not only does it take 2 months, but it's like $100K. So, and to get us into it and to get it off the lot and delivered to us, it's going to be roughly about $30K. So those are kind of the numbers that I'm negotiating with the family as of now. But like I said, I'm more so just kind of playing the waiting game and hoping to hear back from them soon.
Thank you, Clarissa. Thanks for sharing where you're at, your journey, also just being very clear about what your, I guess, your ask is. That's so important. It looks like we have 3 other people that I want to give space to, and then I'll have Emerald take over. Does Christina, do you want to go and share a little bit about your journey, where you're at?
Sure. My name is Christina Adams, and I have done a whole array of different things. I used to have my own daycare, and then currently I have a construction company with my husband. So that is the business that I'm wanting to fund. In addition to that, I'm the I'm the workforce development manager at Swinomish Tribal Community, and one of my dreams is to create a startup incubation program here for our tribal members. So there's a lot of different capacities I'd like to do. I've only a month into my to my workforce development position, but I've had this dream in the back of my head for quite some time, so I'm pretty passionate about that. As for my business, we started our business in 2020, and we are kind of eking out, maybe 20,000 a year which really isn't very much when it comes to construction. However, we are running out of, or we need to get capital so we can get more equipment. And then also we need to get our infrastructure for employees. We need employees now. But there's a lot of other things like I need support in building my accounting background, or like, well, accounting. Like I have QuickBooks, but I don't know how to do the payroll and I don't know how to do the taxes. And I need basically somebody to help me with wiping my records and start all over again because my chart of accounts is a mess. And then also I just need assistance in kind of navigating the workers' comp and more of the those kind of things. And my son is working on my social media account, which is good. But I mean, there's so much to come with running a successful business, especially in a rural area. So that's kind of where I am on my journey. I just a lot of support, and then also building a infrastructure for growth. Because at this point we've grown as far as we can because we don't have any more staff. So, but it's very exciting in both capacities.
Okay. Thank you, Christina, for sharing. Yeah, it looks like you got a lot of like capacity, technical assistance needs in like accounting, social comms, all the things, right, that go into a business. But
Right.
really appreciate you sharing. Do you have a sense of what your what your dream financial raise would be, or your capital raise, or how much money you would need to get all of these things activated?
To get to the capacity, I mean, there definitely is capacity. The market is pretty open here for construction. We are working predominantly with our tribal communities, but I'd like to reach more of our other tribal communities. So to do that, I definitely needed a workforce, vehicles, and additional equipment. So no, I don't know. I probably,
Okay.
I don't know.
All right, no problem. Thank you. We got two more folks here with us. I want to open up space for Vivara, who joined, as well as Willow, just to kind of share, reflect back, yeah, where you're at in your journey, what your needs are.
Hello everyone. My name is Barbara. My native name is Barpak, which means rich crown for tree or messy hair. So you might see it's kind of true. I'm comedian and I'm from Siberia. So I'm a Asian-looking immigrant, indigenous woman. So kind of, not easy to be in the US. And today I attended a workshop on how to manage your money. And I dropped just like in 15 minutes when we started to talk about how to save 15% and rely all your bills and stuff within 50% of your income. And I'm like, okay, it's something not for me, right? So, and when I joined, I heard that yes, you need to hustle a lot. You need to do a side project, side job, side business, whatever to survive. And I'm like, yes, I'm in the right place. It's not like easy. Say like, oh. So I'm sorry for off top. I'm working as a project manager in Institute of Arctic Studies at Dartmouth College. And I'm thinking about, because I work with Arctic and we look at, as a researcher, we look a lot at sustainability in a business and stuff like that. So, and I'm just thinking like, okay, how I can start my own business. And my idea is to work on fish leather, producing fish leather, and maybe and what else you can get through these biodegradable side products from fisheries. So, but I think I have a lot of theory as a researcher, but I don't know how to start business, and I just want to be at the with you just to get support and and be around empowered women and be sure that it's doable. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm really inspired by hearing all of you and your journeys and where you're at and your approaches. Willow, did you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. Hesje. Hello, Jamie. I'm off camera today. Good to see you again. And hello, everyone. My name is Willow Blythe Carroll. I'm a citizen of Muskogee Creek Nation, and I'm a corporate communicator and a speaker and a storyteller as well. And through my business, I share my personal story and also tools to truly inspire and uplift Indigenous youth and emerging leaders in their own personal journey. So my business is service-based. And so I'm here today just to truly knowledge share and really just learn as much as I can as I grow and evolve my business. So.
Thanks, Willow. And are you looking to raise capital to fund your business in the future? And do you have a sense of what that looks like or what would be used for?
I'll be honest, I'm still in the beginning stages in a lot of ways, so I haven't quite got to that point, but hopefully in this call, I can kind of learn more about that and what that entails.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Did I miss anybody? I think I got everyone because Grayson's here to support. Right?
I think, yeah, but Grayson does have a company, and so she may want to
Okay.
add her thing if you want to, Grayson.
Hi. I'm Grayson. I am primarily here in support of Emerald, who I work closely with. I am her personal assistant. She took me on in a pretty vulnerable time in my life. And so as her personal assistant and as her friend, I like to support her in vulnerable parts of her life. And this is just one aspect of that. Full transparency, I am not part of the Indigenous community myself, but I am a huge proponent for diversity and inclusion. Like, that's probably my big thing, is that there is a space for everybody at our table. And I love bringing and supporting that energy. In general, I have a rough idea of what I want to do with the rest of my life, but I don't know. I know where to start, but I don't know how much money I will need. And I don't know quite how to get there. I am currently a certified bookkeeper and certified in QuickBooks Online, which was super exciting. But long haul, I want to be an ADHD life coach. As somebody with ADHD myself, I do not see enough representation or support of neurodivergent people. I also really want to help target and focus people with cluster B personality disorders in terms of offering understanding healing sessions like, hey, I get it. I know what you're going through. I'm diagnosed with borderline. So like, I understand it's really awful. There's not enough accessible treatment for us. There's huge stigmas. And so being an advocate against those stigmas. Further on down the line, I would like to also be a postnatal life coach. So not a fitness coach, which is what most of the certification programs are available for, postnatal, but specifically life support for new parents as they enter this new phase of their lives in being a parent, and postpartum doula. Because I don't think that there's enough community support for people who are experiencing postpartum, especially after the wake of COVID. My baby is a COVID baby. I went through my pregnancy almost completely isolated, and it was a really sobering, incredibly isolatory experience. And I'm really passionate about helping remove those barriers from postpartum support and truly making it accessible for people who need it. So yeah, that's my spiel.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for sharing your richness, your stories, your expertise, your motivations, your passions. I just really love being a witness of it and how I think I hear from all of you, social entrepreneurs serving other folks as well. And you're both intimately woven into this work. So thank you. That being said, I'm going to stop my facilitation and I'm going to hand it over to Emerald.
I heard so many great things. I love sitting in circles of women and especially women entrepreneurs. It's so inspiring. And anytime I feel like the world is getting too bleak, I can just tap into these circles, knowing that there are people on the ground working to make the world a better place, bit by bit. And so today I really I'm going to share my story about how my company came to be and just some of the background and the things that we have done. And then I also want to talk about creating a financial legacy. What does that even mean? How do you begin to do that? I want to talk about capital and the types of capital out there, and then also how to be successful in going after those types of capital. And along the way, I want to make sure that if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. You can raise your hand, you can come off mute. I'm not going to be insulted if you interrupt me. And so just, whatever feels right. If you need to say something, just please say it. And I also just want to make sure that, if I don't use presentations. So if you're a visual learner, you can turn on the captions and that will kind of help you be able to see as we go through. You can see the words as I speak them, and that will help you as well if you're a visual learner or hard of hearing. And then the thing that I like to start with is just making sure that we do all assume best intentions here. Right, we're here to help each other and to lift each other up, but we are also human, and so we may say the wrong thing. We may inadvertently hurt somebody's feelings or say something that offends them. But we want to assume the best intentions of each other, knowing that it was not meant that way. And I love to set that expectation in a circle, particularly in circles of women, because it's really easy to accidentally say something and not mean it that way. And so I want everybody to walk away from here knowing that we were all here in support of each other. And so as we start out, I would love for us to just take 3 deep breaths together. And this helps us come into coherence. There's some really great research out there showing that when people are together, we do come into coherence. Our breathing will come together. We'll start breathing at the same rate. Our hearts will start beating at the same rate if we're close enough. It's a little harder to do online, but I just love that idea that if we are in coherence, our hearts can all be beating at the same time. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing about our humanity. And so let's just go ahead and close our eyes, take a deep breath in and out, and in and out, and more, in and out. I love that. I also kind of feel like I miss my calling as an IHS doctor when I do that. I'm like, oh, I should be listening to everybody's lungs. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about my story a little bit. I'm a late bloomer. I was 33 when I graduated from university. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. But when I graduated, I knew that I wasn't going to go into the psychology field because I needed to be able to work from home. And I needed to be able to work from home because I have a child with special needs, and I had to be able to get him on the bus and off the bus and have that flexibility to take him to therapy and all of those things. But also at the same time, I was having some health issues, and there was just no way for me to be able to work outside the home due to those health issues. And so I found a great job as a virtual assistant. And a virtual assistant is just a regular assistant, office assistant, executive assistant who works from home. And so I worked for a company for about 4 months and I loved my job. I had great clients. I had about 6 clients. They were wonderful. I was learning so much. Company was like really cool and groovy and new and woke and all of those things. I loved it. And then I clocked out on Friday and came to work the following Monday, and everything was turned off. And apparently over the weekend, they had sent out an email saying that the company had run out of money, which is a common problem in startups, and that we were done. Everything was closed. I didn't get that email. And so I was panicked. I was like, did I get fired? What happened? What's going on? And finally, through Facebook, I was able to find one of my coworkers, and they told me. And as a company of virtual assistants, I think there was about 500 of us at that time. You know, we very quickly formed a group on Facebook, and we're, you know, sourcing things. But at the same time, my clients started reaching out to me because it's Monday morning, and all of a sudden they don't have their assistant, and they're like, I don't know what's been scheduled, what hasn't been scheduled. You know, did you hear back from so and so? And I'm like, I don't have access to any of that, you know. And they too, it wasn't just me who was out of a job. It was all of the clients were also out of the help that they needed. And so I was very lucky. All 6 of my clients wanted to continue working with me. And at first I was very resistant because I didn't want to start a business. It was not in my 5-year plan. I didn't want to be responsible for it. I just wanted to clock in, clock off, and go back to my real life of taking care of my son. And so it took me a few days and a lot of crying and a lot of, you know, gnashing of teeth and support from my husband and my clients. And finally I was like, okay, I can do this. And so I started my company, and it was just me and my 6 clients. And they started sending me referrals, and I would turn them down because I was pretty much maxed out on the amount of work that I could do in a work week. And I was very comfortable with the amount of money I was making because that was the most money that I had made in my life. It was like they cut out the middleman. So I was making, I think that first year I made something like $60,000. And I was like, that's amazing. You know, my dad was a police officer my whole life. And like, we never had that kind of money. And so I was happy with that. And so for probably about the first 4 years, even though I kept getting these nudges from my clients, and most of them were startups and entrepreneurs, so they couldn't understand why I didn't want to do the same thing they were doing, which is start a big company, you know, and take over the world. And I was like, no, I just, you know, I'm happy where I'm at. And then during that time, my health also kept getting worse and worse and worse until I ended up in the hospital, and I should have died because when I finally got brave enough to go into the hospital, I had lost over half of my blood volume, and I should not have been here anymore. And it really scared me because what I realized was that my son, if I was gone, of course, his dad and my family and everybody would support him, but he needed a financial support for the rest of his life, not the rest of my life, but the rest of his life. And if I'm not here and I'm only just staying with the status quo, I'm never going to have the money to do that for him. And so that was my wake up call. So I started like researching it, and I was really scared, but I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to grow my company. This is going to be a great vehicle to make this financial legacy for my child come true. Kind of like what Clarissa was saying, like she has these dreams of being a farmer and feeding people, but the way that she's going to make the money to do that is through Lux Pup. Well, that was my idea. It was like, okay, I need to create a financial legacy for my child, and the way I'm going to do it is through this Emerald Virtual Assistants. That's the vehicle. And so I got ready to grow. I started asking for referrals. I was ready to go. And about 4 months later, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so then it was like full stop and brakes were on. And I felt like the universe was telling me, yep, you got to grow, but you got to get your body sorted first. And so it took a couple years, but I came through and I just stayed at the status quo. I hired somebody to help me out while I was in treatment and take care of my current client load. And then I went ahead and did it all on February 14th of 2020. I got a call from my oncologist saying, you're in the clear. We'll see you in 6 months to recheck. And so I was super excited and I'm like, all right, now I'm gonna grow. We're ready, let's do it. I've been doing all of this groundwork, laying all this groundwork to grow. And then of course, 2020 happened. And within, I would say within about 2 months, I had lost all of my clients because at the time, all of the clients that I had were based through referrals, meaning that they were mostly in the same industries. And those industries happened to be venture capitalist firms and adjuncts to the travel industry, like parking. And so both of those industries quit spending money or lost money very quickly. And so I went from grow to no clients at all. And at the time I was living in Canada, and when they closed the border, I kind of panicked because my mom is elderly and I was like, we have to move back to the US. So in some ways it was good because it gave me that window to move my family back. My husband got transferred to the Washington, D.C. area, and I had just a few months to get us resettled. And then I took a couple weeks and just had to really do some like soul searching of, am I going to continue this company? Or maybe it's time for me to go back to school and get my master's so I can be a librarian, or, like maybe it's time to do something different. And what I came back to was my son and this drive inside that I had to use my company as a vehicle to create this legacy for him. And so I decided to go ahead and grow. And we went from it just being me, because I'd had to lay my team off, and I didn't know anything about getting clients. I didn't know anything about sales. I would get sick just at the thought of sales. You probably wouldn't know this, but I'm a hardcore introvert. And so I started at the beginning. I just started joining groups like these. And I made a challenge to myself that every single class or group that I joined, that I would talk at least once, even if it was just at the end to say thank you. I would come off mute and I would talk. And within about 6 weeks of doing that, I got my first client. And then a few weeks later, I got another client. And then one of my old clients came back and was like, hey, I think I have the money to come back and we're going to start working together again. Okay, yeah, great. And so I went from that to 2021 and 2022s were the best years financially that my company has ever had. And we grew from just me. I think at one point we had about 14 people on our team. We grew our gross income, I think over 21 times from what we made in 2020. Like, it was incredible. And of course, now the economy is kind of rocky and we've leveled off and we've lost clients because they lost their funding and all of those things. But I'm okay with it because I know, having come through that I can handle whatever the economy is going to throw at me. And I've learned so much through that, even though at the time I was like, come on, universe, what is going on? But I learned so much that I feel a lot more confidence in myself to come through whatever comes through, whatever shows up for me. And so that's where my company is at today. And the two things that I would really love for you to take out of that is, one, I didn't mention at all anytime that I had investors or that I took out a loan or that anything. I was very, very lucky that my husband's income was enough to pay our bills. And so when we didn't have anything, we were still covered. But my company has always been self-funded the whole time. And then the second thing is knowing and holding on to my why, because things will go sideways and there was going to be really hard days. But you have to know your deep why of why you're doing this. Otherwise, there's no point. Like I could go get a job at Walmart and be okay and make money, and it wouldn't be great. I wouldn't be living my dream or my passion. But if the whole purpose is just to make money, then I can make money at Walmart, you know? So I think that that's the first thing that I want to start when we talk about a financial legacy, and creating a financial legacy for yourself and for your family is starting with your why, understanding what is it that drives you. So you get up in the morning on those really hard days so that, you know, I just know it becomes, for me, it's like this pillar of truth that resides inside of me, so that anytime I feel like giving up, all I have to do is go back to my why and my son, and nothing's going to stop me. And so I would start there when you're talking about creating a financial legacy. Start with your why. And it's going to be different for everyone. We're all here for different reasons. We all have different journeys, but start with why. Then let's talk a little bit about financial legacy. So once again, a financial legacy is also different for everybody. For you, it could be generational wealth. It could be that you don't ever want your descendants to not have a home to live in. So maybe it's not generational wealth like a Rockefeller. Maybe it's just having land and a family homestead so that you know your descendants will always have a home. And it may change over time. For me, my why started out as just my son. And then once I saw my company's capabilities, then I was able to expand that. My son just became the pebble in the pond. And I was like, hey, I could make enough money with this company to send my nieces and nephews to college so they don't come out with 70 grand in college debt like I did, right? Like, how amazing would that be? And then as I started hiring my team, my incredible team, I started to see how having money, being able to pay their bills, but also having a job that they could feel good about themselves in and take pride in, and a workplace that was healthy and supportive, seeing how that changed them has expanded my why to my company, to the people working in my company as well. I want to change the way that work exists. Like, it doesn't have to be a drudgery. It doesn't have to be a catty, backbiting thing. It can be something that you look forward to. And that's truly what I'm trying to create within my company. My throat's going out over here. But another thing that I learned, and it wasn't intentional, we applied for a grant last year, and I had everybody do demographics because that particular grant wanted to know about serving underserved communities. And what I learned was that within my company, every single person on my team came from an underserved community, whether it was a Black, brown, minority community, whether it was LGBTQ plus community, whether it was a veteran or the family of a veteran, whether it was disabled, neurodiversity. Like we all come from such a interesting melting pot, but it's amazing how much stronger we are together, and how having that, once again, a work that you can feel good about yourself has changed. And so my why is now, like, I want to serve and bring in more and more virtual assistants from underserved communities so they can have that too. So that they can not just buy food for their families, but they can grow and learn and feel good about themselves. And so your why may change over time too. And I fully expect mine to continue to grow as my ability to see a bigger picture grows. But at the end of the end, that very core reason is there. And so some questions that you want to ask yourself, or that you may find yourself asking, is how do I find it, right? So you start with just asking yourself, why am I doing this? And then write an answer, just whatever comes to your mind. And then ask yourself again, why am I doing that? And then do it again and ask yourself why and why and why and why, at least 6 times. It's kind of like trying to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop, right? You want to keep asking yourself why until you get to the center and that core reason. And you will just keep asking and keep writing, and you'll get to it. And then you want to know, how do you fund it? It may be that it is your company that you're creating is just a vehicle to bring that dream of your why into reality. Or maybe your why is your company, and that's how it works together. And how do you make it a reality? Well, the part of making it a reality is you need to know, and we have to get really tactical here, right? So we're going from a dream, from creating this beautiful dream in your mind of your why and what it looks like, to how to bring it into reality. And so this part, you're going to need to do some research. You're going to need to know how much money you need. So like for my son, it was like, okay, so life expectancy for males was about this much. For how much is he going to need to live, with interest rates, with market rates. Like, it's going to take some time to do the research, but do the research because you have to bring it into reality. So take some time, do the research. How much money do you need? What's the legal setup? Do you need to create a trust? If you're buying property for your family to create that legacy, maybe you have to get an estate planning going, or a will. Like, these are things that seem like they're, not part of a dream, but they're so important to making that dream a reality. So you just start with your why, create the dream, and then work backwards. How much money do you need? And then how much time do you have? So let's say you want to work for another 20 years. So you have 20 years to create X amount of money. And then, and this is probably the most important part, is to spend time every day working on it. So, and I'm not talking about spending time every day, like putting money in the bank, because you're probably not going to have money every day to put into the bank. But you want to spend 15 minutes. What I like to do is, in the morning, I have my cup of coffee or tea, and that 15 minutes is sacrosanct. Nobody gets to talk to me. The phone doesn't get to ring. It's not even in the room with me. And I just drink my coffee and I picture that dream. And I do everything I can to picture down to, what the weather's going to look like when I step out onto the porch the morning that my dream is real. And then at the end of the day, before you sign off, everybody else has gone home, take 15 minutes, get out your spreadsheet of how much it's going to cost, and write in there, how much money you could add this week, right? Maybe it's just $1, maybe it's $2, or maybe you're not at the point where you're adding money to an account. Maybe it's researching what accounts have the most interest, but do something tactical every day that brings you closer to your why. Maybe you're researching what kind of legal setup you need to do it. Maybe you're just creating that spreadsheet so that you can keep track of how much money you need over time. And then just keep a running list. I have a Google Doc, and write one thing that you did that brought you closer to your why today. You made a sales call, you researched interest rates, whatever it is, just one thing that you did that could bring that dream closer to reality. Because by doing this, what you're doing is you're creating pathways in your brain saying that this is important. We're not giving up on this. This is important, and I'm going to think about it. I'm going to take actions on it, because creating a dream and making that dream reality is not a passive game. It's active. We have to be active in making it real. And so doing those things daily, envisioning it, keeping track of it, and then also keeping track of what you did to move that needle forward. It's just a sentence on a piece of paper or on a Google Doc that tells you that you did something real that made that dream come closer. Those things will ensure that your financial legacy comes true. And I know that you can do it. I know that we can do it. And so that's really the important part about the financial legacy. Any questions or anything like that on the financial legacy before, or any comments before I move on to the next?
I appreciate your palabra, sister. I really love everything that you just said. I think something that we talk about, like me with my team, is like showing up for yourself every day. And that can look different every day, right? That's the thing about being here for your body and your spirit. You know, every day is not the same. You know, the systems that are here push us to kind of fit a mold and trying to like show up 100% every day, but that's just not possible, right? But it's about showing up in whatever shape, shape, or form you can for yourself and for your business. And that rings true to me, especially with having ADHD, with having, you know, I have other mental health disorders that I have to, you know, manage every day. Sometimes trying to create and run a business with all these barriers, it can get very overwhelming, and it's easy to shut down. But one thing that I learned for myself is showing up. Sometimes showing up for me can look like I did all my to-do list today, or sometimes it could be I did yoga and that's all I did today. Or it could have been I took my dogs for a walk. But I show up in ways that every day feel my spirit in any shape, or form. And I hope that people who are here can do that and hear that message, because sometimes, yeah, we're not 100% every day. But even if you're at 20%, what does you showing up for yourself at 20% look like? But it's about being dedicated to yourself.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And thank you for bringing that up, because it isn't all about work. It's not all about just grinding. I'm not a proponent of grinding. I'm not a proponent of, you know, putting yourself out there until you have nothing left, right? Because I've done that. I have worked from my hospital bed. I have, you know, done stupid things and worked during my vacations. I've done like just horrible things that isn't going to help me in the long run make that real, right? Because if I burn out, if I lose hope, all of those things, it's not going to actually help me bring that legacy into reality. And so thank you, Genesis, for bringing that up, that it may not be something that it has to do with the business. Maybe it is just, you know, taking 10 minutes and saying a prayer and listening to your heartbeat. And that's what you did today. And that's just as important as calling the bank and trying to renegotiate your interest rates. So 100%. I think that's a beautiful point. Thank you. So the next thing is I want us to talk about money, right? Before we talk about capital, before we talk about how to be successful, we have to be able to talk about money. And there are huge cultural and generational taboos about talking about money. And we get those messages from all kinds of people. But I think it's very true in Indian country. It's true in communities of poverty where you just don't talk about it because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or it's awkward. I know I grew up like we just didn't talk about money ever. It was rude, and so we didn't. So you may get that message from your parents. You may have gotten that message from partners who were controlling, or they didn't want to talk about money because it was awkward, or they wanted to keep all of the finances separated. So there's no community in trying to, work together. Like there's all different ways that we are given messages about why we don't talk about money. It could be societal TV shows or stores who shame people for bouncing a check. Right? So then we just don't talk about it. Like that's a shameful thing. And then, as I mentioned, it's also generational. I feel like some things are easier for the younger generations to talk about money than it is for our elders to talk about money. So the most important thing is that we have to get comfortable talking about money. And so, and of course there's context, right? Like there's a time and a place. If you're at a friend's barbecue, it's probably not the right time to like discuss with your partner how much money they spent on a video game instead of paying the light bill, right? Like that's probably not the time and place, but that doesn't mean that that conversation shouldn't happen. And so it's, how do we get over that? And I want to take a second before I talk about how we get over that and speak to what Genesis mentioned earlier about money and money being corporate, right? Like there's this thing, especially where greed has damaged our earth, it's damaged our communities, and so we want to have money, but we don't want to be part of that ugly machine that is so damaging and hurtful. And so how do we do that, right? And for me, this was a huge issue for me personally, because I had a lot of shame around money. We grew up very poor, and I was so like, I was ashamed of being poor, right? And then as I started making money as an adult, then and being the only person in my family who has money, then it became shameful for having money because I didn't want to make them feel bad, even though I was the only person who, could pay for dinner, and I didn't mind paying for dinner, but it made everybody else feel bad, right? So then money became for me shameful, and it didn't matter whether I had it or whether I didn't have it, it was shameful. And so I was constantly sabotaging myself from making money because I would start to make money and then I would sabotage myself and then I would lose money, right? And it became this huge inner war that I had. And so something about me, I'm a huge Tony Robbins nerd. He's this motivational speaker. He's really over the top. He has tons of energy. He has tons of money. He does a lot of good in the world with it. But I love him and I love his energy. And so I did one of his courses online, one of his events online. And in that, they're trying to teach you how to overcome self-sabotage, the stories that we tell ourselves. And so for me, going through that exercise with him, I was like, okay, I got to deal with this block that I have around money because I am never going to create this legacy. I'm never going to create this company. I'm never going to be able to do the good in the world that I know that I can if I don't deal this block that I have around money. And what I learned in doing that was that money's energy, right? We know that we exchange our energy in return for this piece of paper that symbolizes a certain amount of energy, right? And money itself is not inherently evil. Unfortunately, a lot of people do bad things in order to get money. And so it has a negative connotation. And we don't want to be evil. And then there's also this thing that money is power, right? Money, the people who have money are people who are in power, and that the more money you have, the more power you have. And so, and we see that with, say, like Vladimir Putin, right? Like, he is a demagogue. He has tons and tons and tons of money, and he has absolute power over his country. And so I didn't want to be a part of that either. But what I ended up doing was flipping the script and saying, if money is power and I have lots of money, then that means that I have lots of power and I can be trusted with that power. And that for me was what changed it all, was that little last sentence that says, I can be trusted with it. I can be trusted to do good in the world with it. I can be trusted to source it in good and ethical ways that are not harmful. I can be trusted to use that money in order to enhance and make the world a better place. And for me, that's what broke the block. That's what made it okay for me to dream bigger, to want to do more, because I know that if I can dream bigger, I can do bigger. And so I wanted to share that with you, because those scripts that we tell ourselves about money are so, so powerful, and they can keep us from doing having the impact in the world that we can, we let it. So let's not let it. Let's go for it. Let's make lots of money and turn around and use that money for so much good in the world, because it can be good. Okay, so how do we get over being able to talk about money? And what I want to say is that you just have to start talking about it, right? Talk about it with your partner, talk about it with your parents, talk about it with your kids, and talk about it just so that you get comfortable talking about it. Even if it's just pointing out, like, wow, that was $40, right? Like, we internalize so much of it that we just don't even talk about it. For me, I started talking about it with my pets, right? Like that, I just talked to them about it. I'm like, oh, man, mom spent way too much money on groceries today. And, my dog, she doesn't care as long as her treats are in the budget. My cat cares. She's very nosy. She wants to know where every single penny went. But the more I talk about it with them, the easier it becomes to talk about it with everybody. You can also join online finance groups, because their whole purpose, even if you're like, okay, that's, you may not ascribe to the methods that they want to use, but just being in a space where they're talking about money openly and in a healthy way is really important. And so you can join online finance groups. You can join support groups. I know some churches have like teachings that they'll do. So I think that's important. And I also think that if you do have really deep-seated shame or trauma around money, then it's important to try to get some therapy around that and get some help working through that trauma and shame, because getting comfortable with money and talking about money is going to help your business in all ways, not just in capital. Because if you are doing sales, and once again, if you're a startup, you're probably doing a little bit of everything. So if you're doing sales, you need to be able to talk to your prospective clients about how much your product or service costs. You may have to do negotiations. They may be like, well, can you give me a discount? And you have to be able to tell them yes or no, or, like, it's so important. Or maybe you're trying to negotiate with one of your providers to get a discount. In hiring, you need to be able to talk clearly and confidently about how much money they're going to make and what any kind of other things like retirement and benefits that they're going to have. And if you don't offer those things, why? And how can you help resource them in a different way? In customer service, like if you have clients whose invoices are overdue, you have to be able to talk to them and call them and be like, hey, Bob, I'm going to need you to pay that invoice, you know? And so being able to talk about money comfortably is going to help your business in all areas, not just in raising capital. And so that's the very first thing. But then also when we talk about raising capital, they're going to be all up in your business. And so you're going to have to be able to be comfortable talking about every aspect of your business, because they're going to want to know all of it. And that's also true of like bank loans. Okay, so I know we're running out of time, so I'm gonna speed it up here. So capital, once again, is the money that a company needs to function and to expand. So what are your options for capital? And this is just a quick list. Investors, bank loans, bootstrapping. A lot of times people think that if you're talking about just like in a conventional way and you say you're bootstrapping your company, people will think you got a loan. But for me, bootstrapping is being able to pay for things myself with what my money made, with my company already made, or finding interesting different ways to fund is also bootstrapping, which leads me to the next one, which is getting scrappy, getting creative, finding alternate ways to bring money into your company. You can trade services. You can volunteer. You may say, well, how does volunteering help me make money? Well, if you're volunteering, then you're meeting people and you're putting yourself out there and you're showing your community that you have a heart of service, so that when it comes time to ask for them to support you, you already have that out there. You have that community to help support you as you've been supporting them. You can do crowdfunding, like a Kickstarter campaign. You can, of course, get grants. And then you can also consider getting your minority or women-owned business certification and working through government entities to get contracts, which will help bring money into your business as well. But what I will tell you is that so much of raising capital, no matter what kind of capital you're raising, is doing the work before you actually start raising capital. So you have to know yourself and what your values are. Because if you know that like for me personally, I know that I don't want investors because I don't want to share control over what my company does or doesn't do. I don't want somebody else telling me, no, you can't talk about that at your team meeting. That's too weird and not work related, right? Or like you can't let your team breastfeed while they're at the company meeting. That's a liability. You know, I don't want somebody else telling me those things, so I'm not going to have an investor. I want control over those things in my company. So you need to know yourself and what your values are. You need to know what's available to you, which is why we're here today. You need to know like what kind of business are you creating and what are the startup costs. And this is, you know, this is part of doing that actual work of saying like, okay, I need to figure out how much is that dog wash the truck going to cost? How much is the insurance going to cost? And like mapping out how much money do I need? You need to know how much work you're willing to put in on an ongoing basis. Because if you have investors, that means you need to have quarterly meetings and do quarterly reporting with those investors. If you have grants, you may also have reporting that you need to do. And so you need to know how much work are you willing to put in on an ongoing basis to get that money into your company. You also need to know the amount of hiring that you're going to need to do to grow. And also your vision of who your business is going to be and who you want to do business with. Because maybe there's a big brand name bank that is offering an amazing grant, but they also are the ones who are trying to get a new oil well put in off the coast of Alaska, and you're not okay with that, right? You need to know those things. And then this is probably the most important part. How are we successful, right? According to PitchBook data, back in 2016, so the year after I started my company, only 1.7% of funding, venture funding, so from investors, went to women founders. And in the last 7 years, it's only increased to 2.2%. So all those investors out there, no matter what they're saying, they're not putting their money where their mouth is, because still women founders are only getting 2.2%. But that means that we have to, of course, do so much more work to get that money into our business. So I'm going to reiterate it because it's so, so important. Raising capital, probably 90% of it is doing the work before you even start, before you fill out the application, before you send the email to the investment firm, before you call up the bank to get a loan. 90% of it is doing the work beforehand. And this is even more important when it comes to being successful. So being successful comes in two parts, the intangible and the tangible. The intangible, that's your vision, that's your mission, that's the dream that you're selling. But those are also things like your presence, your charisma, your passion, being able to present your dream in such a way that people want to buy it and that they believe it. And believe it or not, charisma can be taught. We were not born naturally with charisma. It can be taught. There are books out there, there are videos on YouTube, you can learn those things. And then the tangible part is your numbers, right? That's your accounting, that's your business model, that's understanding your market share. Market share means that there's, 100 people out there that are willing to get their dogs washed. And I think that I can get 60 of them to come buy from my company. That's market share. Your financial projections. So if I get 60 people to buy my dog, to get their dog washed here, then I will make this much money. And if I can do it monthly, then I'm making this much money monthly, this much money yearly. And then those are financial projections. And then also your financial history. You have to have your books in order to bring in capital, especially through investors. Like one of us was mentioning that she needs to get her QuickBooks updated and set up properly. That's vital. And it doesn't matter if you're using QuickBooks or a spreadsheet, it needs to be accurate and it needs to be complete. So one of my clients, I've been with them for 8 years, from the very first seed round, their angel round, which is essentially like their family, the money that they put in themselves, their family and friends round is sometimes what it means. I think they made about $75,000 for their angel round to start their company. To earlier this year, they just finished a close for $100 million, their Series D round. And so that's a pretty incredible to be able to be with them through that whole journey. And I asked one of them, Doug, I said, so if you had a piece of advice, what's the most important thing that I can tell the Native Women Lead community on raising that kind of money? And he said, you need to ensure you're solving a real problem and that your solution is easily digestible and accessible for the people who are buying it. So let's see, we got 4 minutes. I'm going to keep going. So we need to make sure our books are in order, and you need to don't just white knuckle yourself through it. Like, try to find a way to learn to love doing your accounting, to learn to love to get those spreadsheets out, because the more that you are comfortable with it, that will come through when you're talking to the bank, when you're talking to the people who are putting out the grant. We don't want to be once again, it goes back to talking and communication. We need to be super comfortable talking about those numbers and being able to communicate about them. Whether it's a bank, an investor, or a grant, they all need to know the positive outcomes. So know this beforehand. What's in it for them? Know how to tell them what's in it for them. Show them that your business can make money. If it's for a grant, then you need to be able to show positive outcomes for the community, for the team. Get comfortable telling your origin your story. You need to be able to share your mission with passion. You need to be able to talk about building your team. These things matter when it comes to being able to sell your dream, which is what you're doing when you're trying to get investors in the door. You need to be super picky about who you're hiring, especially for your first 5 to 10 hires. And so I always like to say, think slow, but act fast, meaning you do the prep work before you start hiring. Know who you're looking for, know what skills and attributes they're going to add to your team, and not just your team, but the company culture overall. In the beginning, you're going to want to hire people who aren't super rigid, people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and work in any department, because when you only have a team of 3, everybody's all hands. The exception to that would be if you're in software or science. You may need a software engineer who only does the software engineering, or a scientist who only does this validation. But your team, especially when you're looking for grants, when you're looking for investors, your team matters. They look at who your team members are, and it speaks to who you are as a leader, the people that you've hired. So it really does matter. And then you have to practice, just practice, practice, practice. Go to pitching events, watch old pitching events on YouTube, pay attention to the ones that win, but also pay attention to the ones that lose. And remember, investors want high growth and returns. Banks want security. They want to know they're going to get that money back with interest. And grants want to know that they're creating a social impact. And so when you're talking about and you're forming your story that you're going to tell them, remember, those are the things that you're speaking to. And my number one piece of advice is to network. You have to start networking now. I learned this the hard way, and I don't want you to have to learn it the hard way. It really doesn't matter who you are, what you're selling, how beautiful your dream is, how sure you are that you can make an impact. It does not matter if you're not in the right room, if you're not selling to the right people. And so the more you network and the more connections that you make, the more likely you are to get into the right room and to be able to talk to the right people who will be able to make your business dreams come true and bring that capital in. Ryan, who is the founder and president of the company I was telling you about, I asked him the same question, and he said, start meeting the people before you need them, and plant seeds in people's mind to get them excited and to build the relationships early. That is the key to success. And it doesn't matter what kind of capital you're going after. And with that, I know we're over a little bit, and I'm sorry I had to speed through the last part of it. I'm happy to share my notes. I'll put my email address here in the chat. If you want, I'm happy to send you an email with my notes in there, so that you can kind of read through them. Or if you want to meet with me, I'm happy to meet with anybody afterwards and go over any specific questions you have around these things. There we are.
Thank you, Emerald. Thank you so much for sharing. I know we're over time, but I wanted to give anybody just an opportunity to ask questions or put your LinkedIn or contact information in there as well. Also, I can be a resource on grants and, our approach, but yeah, I want to just open up the floor to folks before we hop off.
Thank you. Jamie, yeah, I was gonna ask you if you could like, just your email. I'm really interested in just learning more about grants, but I do find them very intimidating and overwhelming. And I just need someone to just like, who I can ask for support, especially with like the brain that I have. But sometimes it's really helpful to have just someone just, help me just come up with the little steps so I don't get overwhelmed. And
Sure.
just, be more strategic about how I, approach grants. I know that sometimes grants have their own language, their own way of being and stuff like that. And so I just don't know how to approach them. So just learning about that. And also, Emerald, thank you so much for everything. I mean, I would love to just know more about your company. I don't have the financial capital right now for like a virtual assistant, but it is something that I'm looking forward to once I'm at a place that I want that. And I would love to know about your service and I absolutely know people who would love that. And I'm excited to support Indigenous virtual assistants and see how, I want that. I want all my team to be Indigenous. So just having those resources is just having that. I would love to contact you and talk about what your company is. And I'm really curious about what you do.
Yeah, I'm happy. Like I said, if you want to email me and we can set up a time to chat. I can also talk to you a little bit about creating just like a basic grant package that has all of your basic information in it, so that then when you'll have it ready for whichever grant you want to go to, and then you just kind of tweak it to speak to that grant. So I'm happy to go over that with you as well. And I think it was Christina, if you want to reach out to me as well, I'm happy to have one of my team members talk to you about your setup with QuickBooks, because I do have a couple of bookkeepers on my team, and one of my team members right now is going through to get her grant certification. So her grant writing certification. So I'm happy to go over any of that with you ladies as well.
That would be so helpful. Also, I was wondering, one of my goals is to get livable wages on the reservation. So currently, because we're rural and either work for the tribe that not necessarily will be paying the current average for that position if you go somewhere else. And in addition to that, you got that or you gas station or the casino. But what I'd like to do is create some remote positions here at the tribe that will be actually livable wages. Because most of the time, if you leave the reservation, then you're also leaving most of your tribal benefits.
Yeah.
So definitely will want to get some remote positions here on the reservation. And then one of my goals in the next year is to create a shareable workspace with reliable internet, which is a really hard thing here because we're very country.
Yeah, I'm happy to chat about that as well. I know one of the initiatives that my company has done is reaching out to tribal colleges when we're hiring to open that up for college students so that they have a job that's flexible and things like that. And I know you mentioned that you work in the department to try to help people get those kind of skills. So yeah, let's meet up and chat.
Sounds great. Thanks again for your presentation, being so candid with your experiences. Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Emerald. You were just a wealth of resources, experience, expertise, and for also the courage to share your story. It's inspired a lot of us just to remember our why and to hold that in our core and to hold that and protect that no matter what, as we navigate growing businesses and our dreams as well as, and I think one thing that came up for me is this is really rooted in our personal why, but it is also in tandem with our business why. And it's okay to hold or give ourselves permission to build that legacy as we define it. So I just wanted to say that. And I put my email in the chat as well. I'm happy to support folks in like some strategy or some dreaming or design. Emerald's been phenomenal in working with a lot of capital efforts as well and holding space for entrepreneurs and other folks. So just want to thank you all. I hope you have a great day. We'll see you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.